They are absolutely not going to swap out Joe Biden.
If Trump wins, we will probably have an insanely good 4 years from a business perspective.
So I've given this some thought. I did the analysis. I was one of the only ones to point out a lot of details that no one else is talking about, especially partisan left-wing media. Reason being, my goal here is not views and growing my channel and trying to make money or trying to get famous or trying to get attention. I actually want to help people. I want to inform people. I want to help them to think more critically. I want to help them to embrace the truth, not their truth or my truth. I'm not pushing an agenda. So based on that, I looked at what was being said, stepped outside of that, actually looked at the data myself, and I was able to find out what the real truth was of what's happening with Joe Biden. And now that I've dug a little bit deeper and had a few days to think about it, I am very, very confident. Obviously, you can't predict the future. You never know what happens. But outside of a drastic event that would make the debate look like nothing, to the point where no one's talking about the debate anymore, all they're talking about is, let's say Biden collapses, on stage or something, and he gets hospitalized. At this point, with what we've seen so far, they're not going to be able to tolerate something like that. That would present an image. Like, if you think things are bad now, if Joe Biden tumbles and falls or has some major, major health episode, because right now, everything you saw in the debate could be explained simply by, actually sleep deprivation combined with his age, combined with slight dementia, which Trump also clearly suffers from as well. So it's not something unique to Joe Biden in terms of the dementia. But if you combine his age with lack of sleep, because even at 48 years old, I experienced massive cognitive decline that was a result of sleep deprivation. I did a 24-hour drive. We drove from New York to Miami in 24 hours straight. We didn't stay in a hotel, right? It wasn't just me. I was sharing with another person, but I can't really sleep in a car. And I was doing the last few hours. I was so, like, my cognitive status was so much lower. I was basically mentally handicapped. Imagine me on lack of sleep anywhere near Joe Biden's age, doing an extremely high pressure event as a debate like that, knowing the stakes, polls were really bad in general. A lot of talk about Biden's mental state. And then recently they've been hammering him with the G7 this and whatever. I'm sure that has some level of effect on him. So he knew that with the polls, what they were at, he had to succeed. Otherwise it would be disastrous. He would have known that, right? Now, being a human, think about you under a high pressure situation and the kind of stress that gives you. Now, remember, this is not a normal person. The person getting that level of stress has the stress of being the president of the United States. So he has a job to do. There's a lot of pressure, global conflict, all this kind of stuff he has to deal with. And then on top of that, he's got this major debate. So sleep alone could explain that. However, if he collapses on stage or at an event, if he actually gets hospitalized for some reason, something like that, now you're actually getting to something that this is not a opinion or feelings or whatever, or people jumping to conclusions. A very clear, definitive, whoa, right? That outside of that, I don't see any scenario where the Democratic Party is going to replace Joe Biden. Now, if I'm a left-wing channel, right, doing this as a business, trying to make money, trying to get engagement, I would never say that to you. First of all, I want Trump to win because Trump is great for content. If Trump wins, he's going to do all kind of craziness. That's going to be great content for me to say, oh my goodness, Trump just fired whatever, and we think he's trying to do da-da-da. Like, there's going to be so many scandals, right? And he's going to be doing press conferences saying ridiculous. I mean, we remember how it was, right? That a lot of these left-wing channels did so well under Donald Trump. The mainstream media, who was suffering, they got a big boost from Donald Trump. So the best thing that I would want as a left-wing channel is for Donald Trump to win. I've said this for years, and I was validated by some of these left-wing channels admitting that. David Pakman did a video recently. I'm gonna do a video about that coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe, click on the like button. David Pakman admitted it, that Trump winning would be great for business, and he said his channel would blow up if Donald Trump won. So keep that in mind. If I'm a left-wing channel running it as a business, I'm not focused on the country and the effects of Trump winning and all this kind of stuff. And I feel isolated because, craziness that Trump does not going to affect me because I make my living online. I can move and live anywhere in the country that I want to and survive. I might be living in a high expense blue city area. So it would actually be better for me if I had to move somewhere else. I can move to a cheaper part of the country. So whatever craziness is happening, I can, build a cocoon. I could go buy some ranch in the middle of nowhere and make tons of money from my bedroom, right? So that's the left-wing media perspective. And you're going to make a ton of money because, again, Trump will be great for content. So
these people don't get it, If Trump wins, I'll be fine because I live in a blue state. And more than likely, the show will explode. That's the reality. I've said it before. I think Trump's bad for the country, but he's great for shows like this. If Trump wins, we will probably have an insanely good 4 years from a business perspective.
If I'm a left-wing channel, what I want to tell you is how dumb the Democratic Party is, and look at them, and they're all, it's like a cult, and they're acting just like MAGA, and there's elite structure, and how dare you challenge.
Especially if I'm running a far left channel, communist, socialist type of channel that is capitalizing on the anti-Democratic Party or anti-liberal sentiment with a business model that's kind of similar to right-wing media, but from a left-wing perspective. Those types of channels absolutely going to be focusing on elite whatever, duopoly whatever. We told you so, the Democrat Party is horrible, blah, blah, blah. That'll be great for content.
Now, I'm not saying those are not valid assessments. And during the primary, those are very valid assessments. But a few months away from the election, now is not the time for that kind of rhetoric. And in fact, that rhetoric would be misguided, because put aside that reality that a lot of that stuff is true, right? There is this kind of, like, for example, the idea of saying that Pelosi should have stepped down is like, how dare you? And I even know a friend who was a liberal, and she was just kind of like, but who would do a better job? Like, there's this idea of like, she's irreplaceable, and, how dare you speak against the establishment? Like, I recognize that. And it's not that these left-wing parts of channels are just like straight up lying, but they can mislead you because they're businesses and their focus is on getting engagement and getting views, right? So that being the case, I would want to talk about that. I'd also want to try to pander to my audience in terms of trying to boost up, and just like how the right wing will gaslight their audiences, right? Like, for example, if Trump is not doing well, any little small thing that happens that you can paint as a victory, it would be great content to put a video on, like, Trump is winning, or Trump's going to win, or, Trump just beat the Democrats, whatever, like any little ounce of anything. Just like, Brian Tyler Cohen, any little ounce of anything that you can say, like, the Democrats are winning, Democrats won an election somewhere, whatever it is. He knows his audience loves that. It's like kind of cope content, like, oh yeah, the Democrats, they're winning, or Trump, yeah, Trump is going to beat those liberals, yeah, right? So I would want to try and pick on some kind of a candidate that's an independent, right? Because that's the kind of thing, like, the audience, as a left-wing channel, my audience is going to be, they like the idea, as I do, of an independent candidate coming from a third party that's going to challenge the establishment, go against the duopoly, right? So now would be a great time for a left-wing channel to elevate somebody like that. So knowing that this is whoever it is probably going to be an unserious candidate that has absolutely no chance of winning at this point, right? The time, again, during the primary, right? If they really cared, there could have been a big movement, a serious movement about surrounding a serious candidate that has serious chance to challenge the system. But instead, they were promoting people like Cornel West, which was obviously a buffoon from the beginning, right? From the fact that he started his campaign, with the party that he started with, as a person who was behind the scenes, so he knew what the leader of that party was doing. Like, that was just telling you that the Cornel West of today is not the Cornel West of the past, right? But they all were promoting him, or Marianne Williamson, who, I'm sorry guys, she ain't it, man. I want an independent, I want a third party, I want somebody to go against the duopoly. But these people, like every single person that they brought up inside of whatever they thought, they weren't it, right? Which is why they never got anywhere, right? Look at what happened with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders I was never an Obama guy, never a Democrat, but Bernie Sanders is one guy who got my attention. I was never a Bernie guy either, but he got my attention. He was probably, and still is, one of the best options that they have, right? But that's not a popular opinion right now, because Bernie has been very weak lately. They look at him as betraying them, and certainly those are accurate things, right? So it's good content to go and hate on Bernie and Bernie this, Bernie that. And again, I'm not a Bernie guy, right? But I realize the business angle of talking down on Bernie and then trying to look for the next Bernie. So it's like, oh, it's Cornel West, or it's Marianne Williamson, right? But the reality is he was and still is their best candidate. But that's not going to be popular, from business perspective. Like, nobody really wants to hear about Bernie right now, right? Because Bernie, you're supposed to promote the idea that he sold out and blah, blah, blah. And again, I would agree with a lot of that to some degree. But besides of him, put that aside, he's probably one of the best options that they have. The most serious candidate, the most honest candidate, the one who has the best capability of actually delivering. Like, it ain't RFK, it ain't any of these other people, right? However, me saying that, the idea of him winning right now, it ain't happening, right? So even if they were talking about Bernie Sanders, that's how unserious they are. Even if they were talking about their best candidate, which is Bernie Sanders in my view, that would still be a very unserious take, because I don't see any chance of Bernie Sanders winning. Right? It's too late for that. The primary was the time for that, right? So that's how unserious they are, because they'll be talking about maybe RFK or Marianne Wilson or Cornel West. They're going to pick one of those people, unserious candidates that have no chance whatsoever. So they're going to distract their audience, right? they're gonna on one hand tell you about how dangerous things are and fascism is coming, blah 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 blah. But on the other hand, rather than focusing their audience on a tangible strategy to save the country, they're going to choose what's great for content, which is again to focus on these unrealistic people this late in the game, right? But let's contrast that with the Democratic Party. So put aside the idea that I don't like Democrats. I hate Democrats. I think they're frauds and liars. And this cat, you better not knock over my phone. Let's put that aside, right? So I'm not a Democrat, not here caping for Democrats, but put that aside. The Democratic Party is going to be operating in a different world separate from the content creation space, right? The campaign has professionals who do this for a living. They've certainly made mistakes. They've certainly fumbled around in different things. And again, you can get caught up in that, and that's a popular narrative to focus on how incompetent that they can be. Like again, you got to separate content and what gets views versus reality and logic and critical thinking. So we acknowledge and recognize the incompetence of a lot of these campaigns and Democratic strategists and whatever. But put that aside. The reality is, these are going to be people who are, contrary to some of the very stupid actions that they take, actually very smart people who came from Ivy League schools. In order to get degrees that they did, in order to qualify for the schools that they went to, they had to be not stupid, all right? Just because you're not stupid doesn't mean you can't do stupid things. Let's contrast that, right? So you can be very smart and do stupid things, right? So let's put that aside. But in order for you to get in those schools, you would have to be smart, right? To be able to get the scores, to be able to qualify, right? And then once you get into school, you have to be smart to be able to pass your classes and then graduate with, high marks, right? So these are not idiots. So they are trained. They know how to do data analysis. They know, strategy in terms of politics. Again, I know it's going to be very hard for some people to put aside like the buffoonery that they've seen. And sometimes what you think is buffoonery is just you misunderstanding, right? Because I see a lot of times left-wing media folks, they will take seriously clowns. Like for example, you have somebody very smart pretending to be stupid, and then a left-wing media person will say, these people are so dumb. And I'm like, no, that person is just playing a part, right? And here you are as a political, pundit or whatever, you're doing your analysis, and you don't recognize that that's just an act that they're putting on. You don't recognize that this person is an Ivy League school graduate. That again, that doesn't mean they can't do stupid things, but this is not an idiot, right? So with that being said, these people that are going to be advising the campaign are going to be data driven, right? Again, content creators focused on what gets them views, what does the audience want to hear, right? The campaign, on the other hand, is focused on what the logistics of what it's going to take to win, right? So they would do an assessment like I did of, is there another candidate who would do better against Trump versus Biden, right? When they do that analysis, they will find out that before the debate and after the debate, the polls suggest that Biden is the best person in terms of what the voters are saying, right? Voters are saying that if they have to choose between Trump and somebody else, that of the list of all the options, Kamala Harris, now this may be a pre-debate poll. I don't know if she still has that 1 point advantage, but the last poll I saw, Kamala Harris was 1 point higher. So a small percentage of people would choose Kamala Harris over Trump more than they would choose Biden over Trump. But every other option, they're choosing Trump, right? There's more people choosing Trump than RFK or Marianne Williamson or Cornel West or whoever else, generic Democrat, Newsom. Every single option, there's more people that are choosing Trump. So Trump's lead gains more traction when you swap him with one of the alternatives. The campaign and the specialist or whoever else that is advising Biden would be aware of this data, just as I'm aware of this data. Now, so you're replacing Biden with somebody who puts you even deeper in the mud in terms of losing and trailing behind Trump, right? So just based on the selection alone, that pushes you down. Then consider the chaos of going through the process of swapping, and then you get these greedy, selfish people who are going to try to jump in and muddy the waters in terms of trying to, they pick a certain person they want to replace Biden with, and then somebody else comes in and says, no, I'm the one, and then trying to do a primary this late in the game. You have RFK that's being funded by Trump supporters, billionaire, millionaire, like elites that are supporting Trump, who will funnel more cash into RFK to muddy the waters to help. Like that's kind of stuff that's going to happen. So you have that to deal with as well. But you started with someone who trails Biden in the polls. And then you get the mess of switching and the logistics and the time and the chaos and the back and forth and the media saying one thing and the Democratic Party trying to push out a different mess. Like right now they're going after them. Now you got Gupta saying that Biden should have a cognitive test. So that's a lot of mess and it's just going to get messier swapping. And at the end of that, you end up with a candidate that was already trailing Biden. So now they're going to be trading Biden even worse in terms of just the negative perception of the Democratic Party. So why on earth would they do that? And then also, where's the money? Only Kamala Harris has access to the funds that they raised. Right, so you have a few months to run a campaign after the scandal and this chaos. You got no money to campaign. So come election day, many people don't even know much about who this person is. That's the alternative. And then, so there's no motivation to go vote for them, right? And if they're not really political, so they're not watching all the MSNBC videos that you're gonna see from now till election about, fascism and this and that and Trump's going, they're not watching that, right? They're not watching that. So when election day comes, it's kind of like, who am I voting for? They got rid of Biden and there's some guy, whoever, I don't know who this person is. Like, that's not enough time to really run a campaign just a few months this late in the game. And the party's already looking bad because they were pushing Biden, and look how Biden's doing. So a lot of trust is lost, So people don't have much faith in the Democratic Party right now. So that party bringing somebody else, it's gonna be a tough sell. So ultimately, the best chance they have is to keep Biden. And I think based on that, they're gonna keep him unless something crazy happens. Because here's another reality, and this is, I want to be data driven. Like, compare my analysis to a lot of the left wing channels that you might be watching or right wing channels, right? I'm not just saying stuff like pulling out of my ass or saying stuff that I know people want to hear. I'm going to give you substance behind it. Like, what is the basis for this? Biden had a horrible debate performance, and you see the chaos that's happening as a result. But even after all of that, the race is still extremely close. Now, I want you to contrast. The way it's being presented and the way perhaps you feel is Biden is doing horribly. And then since the debate, he really fell behind. So in your mind, you feel like Biden is like 20 points behind or 30 points behind or something. Like that's the feelings and the rhetoric. The feelings and the rhetoric is based on that idea. Even though they don't say that specifically because that's not the case, that is how they're speaking as if. But the reality is Trump was leading by like 5 or 6 points and he's still leading by about the same amount. I think there's like a 1 point difference since the debate. So the reality is the polls have barely moved. This debate performance hasn't really hurt Biden in terms of likely voters and what they're going to do, right? That's the reality, right? There's no data that says, I mean, you can distract people and say 72% of people feel that Biden has That's not how elections are run. People are not going to go to the polls and be like, how do I feel about the cognitive? Of course, it's going to have an effect. But the ultimate thing is, who are people going to choose, right? Trump versus Biden. That is the ultimate thing. That is what matters in elections. So it doesn't matter how many people think that Biden is a buffoon or he's falling apart. That doesn't matter. What matters is who are they going to vote for? And the polls suggest that this election, just like any other election, even after the debate, is still going to be close, right? It's still going to be close. And every other alternative makes it worse. That's what the polls say, right? You can go with your feelings. Like, I, like you, would love a third party. I would love somebody else to go challenge the duopoly, right? I don't want Democrats. I don't like Democrats. I'm not a Democrat. Never was a Democrat. I don't think I'll ever live long enough to vote for the Democrats, right? And definitely not Republicans. But I deal in reality. And the reality is there is no one who polls better against Trump other than Kamala Harris, but that's insignificant because it was a 1 point lead, right? And then logistically, she's the only one that it would make sense to switch to because of the money. She'd have access to the campaign funds. So she would have money to be able to run a campaign in the next 3 months. But why go through all of that for marginal gains? The only logical reason that the Democrats would have to swap Joe Biden is if there was somebody out there who could give them a significant advantage. But such a person, I shouldn't say does not exist, but has not been identified, right? And none of these left-wing channels are presenting anyone who has that ability, right? There's no one in left-wing media that's presenting anyone at all that they can demonstrate by any data that would have a significant advantage over Joe Biden. There's no one. There's not a single candidate that is not trailing behind Joe Biden in these polls, right? Now, in a fantasy world, if you were to present all of the options to every single voter in depth, you could identify someone who would have a significant lead, but that's not reality. Reality is there's a ton of people who are just not that informed about a lot of these other people. So you would need to inform them about these other options, but to do so is going to take money, and the money's not there, right? There's no alternative that has the funds to be able to market themselves in a few months and to be able to win. Think about that. You're trying to win the presidency by running a 3-month campaign. Like, where are you going to find enough money to pull that off? I mean, I would think, just off the top of my head, you would have to have twice the amount of money, at least, than what Joe Biden has right now. The campaign currently has 500 million, whatever it is. You'd have to have twice that amount of money to be able to market enough to enough people an alternative sufficient such that they will be able to actually win. And then this thing about ballot access, and it's not happening, guys, right? So again, if I'm a partisan left-wing person that's doing this as a business, I'm going to be focusing you on these other people that I know you might like, and I know you like the idea of someone's going to challenge the whatever, even though I know that that doesn't make any sense, it's not going to happen, right? I'm going to give you cope content, right? But that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to promote left-wing ideology, right-wing ideology, centrist ideology. I'm not here to promote anything other than truth, right? I want you guys to know the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is very, very unlikely that the Democratic Party is going to dump Joe Biden. So Joe Biden is going to continue, and the Democratic Party is not going to make a move to get rid of him. Now, some people are going to take advantage of the chaos and try to get name recognition and pretend and be like, you're like RFK or whoever, are going to be like, yeah, I should be the one, and and the Democratic Party, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be some games played, but ultimately, the DNC is not going to swap Joe Biden because, unfortunately, currently, that is the right move to make. Unless Joe Biden suffers a serious medical event, right, or something crazy happens, some insane scandal, not the Hunter Biden laptop nonsense. I'm talking about legit, something that's not like innuendo. I mean, a direct tie to, China something or whatever it is. Like the way that they were pretending the laptop, connected Biden to whatever, something like that actually happening, that is something where you could see Biden getting swapped, or a medical episode, you could see Biden. But if that doesn't happen, they're not getting rid of Biden, and that's the right move on their part if they want to have a hope of beating Donald Trump. As I say, you can't handle the truth. A lot of people can't handle the truth. I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm not here to validate your ideology. I'm not here to say what I think is going to get the most clicks. I'm here to tell you the truth, right? And I know what I just said this whole video, this is not something a lot of left-wing people want to hear. There's not a large audience for this, right? But I post it anyway because it's not about the views, it's not about the clicks. I'm not trying to get famous. Just here to tell you guys the truth. Anyway, this is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. Comment below. Tell me how I'm wrong.